Good morning, Dana Coleman here, Director of Operations at PMA Web Services. I'd like to thank you for tuning in to our weekly installment of PMA Facebook Live. If you missed us last week, no worries. You can always catch our video on our Facebook page in the video section. Now, over the past week, we have been discussing at PMA Overwhelm. It's something that I think all business owners have experienced at one time or another, or maybe more often, or maybe it's something they used to experience and they've gotten over. But it's a really common theme that we hear about from speaking to small business owners. So overwhelm is, I like to compare it to a thunderstorm. It takes kind of a few ingredients. A few things need to happen, not just one thing, but a few things need to happen all at the right time, and before you know it, you have a thunderstorm. Some changes in pressure, changes in temperature, and boom, you have a really bad thunderstorm. You're in the midst of it. So overwhelm is pretty similar. You have a couple of things happen, these ingredients at the same time, and boom, full-blown overwhelm. So we'd like to help you avoid feeling that way. Nobody works well when they're feeling overwhelmed. It's a terrible feeling. It's stressful. It's hard to think clearly. It's hard to see things clearly. You're not going to be working your best, and you're going to be feeling terrible. So hopefully these tips that we've put together will help you avoid feeling that way in the future. So you want to start by planning your day and even planning your week ahead. So something I like to do is, let's say I take 20 minutes on Sunday and I look at the week ahead, and I like to call it the meat and potatoes, the big things I have going on for the week ahead. I like to write those down. And that would be project deadlines, big ones. So the big project deadlines, let's say if you have kids' appointments that you cannot change, you need to get them to the doctor, or if you have an appointment, any of your client calls, team calls, you want to make sure to note those and put it away. And then on a daily basis, you're going to want to create a plan. So take the list out Monday morning, and before you start diving into your email, answering messages, Slack, Skype, anything, because once you start with that, answering emails and messages, you're kind of done. So don't answer anything yet. You just want to start by planning and plan everything you need to do that day. Any projects that are due, and any deadlines that day. And then you want to look at the list and you want to check off anything that is going to be or needs to be or is delegated. And you'll realize that your list is a lot lighter already. And you want to get in the habit of delegating. If you aren't delegating, it's something that small business owners sometimes struggle with, especially when their business is new, in the beginning phases. I like to compare it to, they won't take their hands off the wheel. They're not ready yet. They have their hands gripping the wheel, and, they have white knuckles, but you have to let go of the wheel and trust that delegating is the best way to go, because you can't handle everything yourself. If you do, try to handle everything yourself. It may work for a little bit, but eventually you're sliding down that slippery slope to overwhelm, and that's not a place where you want to be. So now that you have your list and you have your list of what's being delegated, you'd like to break down the bigger tasks. Now, I'd like to share a piece of advice that my mother shared with me when I was in college, and I was experiencing for the first time, I would say, grown-up overwhelm, when you're not a kid anymore. And I just felt like I had too many dragons to slay. I had so many things going on. I didn't know up from down. I didn't even realize it. I was in the middle of being completely, totally overwhelmed. And my mom gave me this piece of advice. She said, first of all, you need to relax, and you need to break things down into small packages. Well, with business, with projects, what you need to do is take the big projects and break down the pieces in order to complete them. And it makes it manageable. So let's say you have a big project coming up. What you can do, a good example is take a spreadsheet. If you're not a spreadsheet, I'm a spreadsheet person. If you're not a spreadsheet person, you can do it in a word processing program or a note program that you have on your computer. And you want to do this on the computer. And list the project and list all the pieces needed to complete the project. Now, the reason I say you want to do this on the computer is you want to be able to play around with the sequencing. So you may need to move things up and down. So you have the sequencing right, and you can know what you're waiting on from other people, the things that are being delegated or have been delegated or need to be delegated, but each little piece in order to complete the project. And it will feel much more manageable, and it is much more manageable. So that's a habit that you probably want to get into, especially to avoid overwhelm. Now, the next two pieces of advice have a lot to do with setting boundaries. And boundaries can be difficult when you are operating your own business that you've started, and you are making the rules and the policies, procedures. You're setting things for the first time maybe in your life. It's up to you. No one else is setting the working hours. So the first piece of advice is, simply put, work during your working hours. That may sound childish or very simple, but do your work during your working hours. If you do your work during your working hours, then you can not have to work outside of your working hours. And it's like I said, it sounds really simple, but don't slip out to the salon and get your hair done just because you can in the middle of the day and say, well, I'll do that, and then I'll finish this project I have going on at 8 o'clock when the kids are in bed. It's not a good way to operate. You want to stick to your boundaries. And also, you need to set working hours, office hours. That way your clients know when you're available. Your team knows, if you have a team, they know when you're available. And it may be tempting to take a call outside of your business hours, but it's really not the best way to operate your business. It may seem like it's not a big deal just doing it once, but you don't want to be on the phone when you're at, let's say, your kid's soccer game. You don't want to be answering emails at the dinner table with your spouse, partner, friend even. You don't want to do that. And also, you're doing a disservice to your clients as well, because they're not getting your full attention, and you're really, it's not a polite thing to do with your friends and family. And, you're also rocking the boat when it comes to having a good work-life balance. It may be okay once, but when you start doing it on a regular basis, again, you're heading towards that path of becoming overwhelmed. So it's not something you want to get in the habit of doing. So not only set boundaries and set your office hours, but you have to respect them if you want anyone else to respect them. So make sure you're clear with those office hours with your clients, your team. If you need to put them in your email signature, great. People still may not notice them, or clients may ignore them, but you need to be firm with your clients if they're going to ignore them and say, you know, unfortunately, I can't take this call outside of my office hours. However, I'd be more than happy to speak with you, you know, and make sure it's a time that you offer within your office hours. Clients may not like it at first. They may push back or seem unhappy. It's sometimes really hard to do as a business owner because we want to do our best for our clients. We want to offer, you know, the best service possible. We don't want to let them down, but it's also, like I said, doing a disservice to your clients if you're going to be taking a call when you're driving on the freeway. I mean, you can't take notes, or you shouldn't be taking notes while you're driving, and you know, you've got your kids in the car, or even if you're just alone in the car, you don't want to do that. I think your client would like to know that you're at your desk and you have your notes in front of you and you can actually, you know, be present rather than half present on the call. So hopefully, you know, setting boundaries, staying organized, breaking things down into smaller pieces, delegating, all of these things will help keep the overwhelm away. Like I said, they're all these small ingredients is what it takes to become overwhelmed. Just like a storm, or however you'd like to think of it. So, you know, being firm and sticking to these things too, and actually utilizing, you know, if you're going to be organized and create a to-do list and go that route, make sure you're doing it on a regular basis. Don't just do it once and skip next week. Get in the habit of doing it so it feels normal. Stick with your office hours, and stick with the boundaries, respect them so others will respect them. And hopefully you will avoid that horrible, dreaded feeling of overwhelm, and you'll end up enjoying work more and business more, the business you worked so hard to create. So if you have any feedback or stories or tales of woe where you've been overwhelmed, we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line in our comment section. If you share your stories or any stories you have of being overwhelmed, perhaps other business owners may identify with it and they won't feel so alone. They can relate and say, hey, you know, other business owners feel this way or have felt this way too. So we'd love to hear from you. It can be really helpful, like I said, for other business owners who may be going through it. And if you have any ideas or tips or anything that we didn't mention today, that I didn't mention or wasn't mentioned in our blog about overwhelm and how to avoid it, we'd love to hear from you. So drop us a line in our comment section, or if you just want to say hi, we'd love to hear from you also. If you haven't already liked our Facebook page, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, and we would love to see you next week. Thank you for tuning in this week, and have a fantastic week.